Is the Bible true? A debate analysis. A debate asking if the Bible is true was hosted by Pangburn. It featured Alex O'Connor, who took the negative, and Dinesh D'Souza, who took the affirmative. I initially watched the debate on its release day, but had to pause halfway through due to work commitments. When I returned, the debate was no longer available. This gave me several days to reflect on what I had listened to. Earlier today, now last night, the debate became available again, and I watched it in full around 2 p.m. When I wrote this script, it was now 3 a.m., and I found myself unable to stop thinking about the unmitigated disaster this debate turned out to be. Since watching the debate, I have also viewed Gavin Ortlund's analysis. Well, while his responses were better, they did not mitigate the damage D'Souza inflicted on the Christian apologetics community. D'Souza's argumentation and presentation were abominable. The only recent debates I can think of that come close to this one in terms of disaster are the Flowers versus White or the Dillahunty versus Andrew debates. However, neither of those debates were as counterproductive to the Christian message as this one was. To be clear, it was not Alex O'Connor's questions or his mild counters that were the problem. The issue lay with D'Souza's attitude, arrogance, insecurities, ineptitude, and the numerous other failings he displayed during this debate. Like Ortlund, I found myself siding with O'Connor, not because I believed he was correct, but because D'Souza's arguments were so poorly constructed. D'Souza was all over the place, running through the gamut of every Christian argument and counter-argument. Yet he lacked the agility, ability, elegance, patience, charity, and skill, both in apologetics and in debate, necessary to execute these counters and responses effectively. O'Connor, on the other hand, is well versed in theology through his education and experienced in responding to these answers through his interviews with top Christian apologists. He was prepared for everything D'Souza threw at him, and what D'Souza presented was a jumbled mess. In this section, I will highlight the high and low points of the debate by exploring its various topics. Additionally, I will provide counter-arguments that I wish Dinesh D'Souza had made. While I do not claim that my arguments would have won the debate, they certainly would have been better than what D'Souza offered. On whether the Bible is a collection of books or a single book with a univocal voice, D'Souza should have clarified that the Bible is a library, a collection of different books by various human authors, each with its own genre, tropes, and audience. Each book must be understood individually before considering the unified message that emerges from these multiple voices singing in unison. On the question of the Bible's truth, D'Souza should have explained that each book, being of a different genre, is true in its own way. Some books are compilations or anthologies of now lost texts. While this is more common in the older parts of the Old Testament, it is also present in the New Testament. Within the same chapter, some verses might be hyperbolic or ethical, while others are literal and historical. On whether the Bible contradicts itself, a sardonic yet accurate response would have been better than what D'Souza presented. He should have countered that the Bible only has apparent contradictions, and even then, this is only a problem to the modern Western mind, which struggles to accept paradoxes or mystery. These apparent contradictions would not have been difficult for its intended audience to reconcile. D'Souza should have remained tactically silent and let O'Connor rage as much as he wanted, making him look flustered instead of constantly trying to respond to his every complaint and whine, which made D'Souza look desperate and inconsistent. On squaring the message of the Old Testament with the New, D'Souza should have asserted, without compromise and with great confidence, that Christians do affirm the Old Testament, but that it must be interpreted through the lens of Jesus, just as Paul and the gospel writers did. This recontextualization through the application of typology is how Christians understand the Old Testament. And when he said this, he should not have flinched. On the scientific accuracy of the Bible, D'Souza made a critical error by arguing for the Bible's scientific accuracy. The Bible is not a scientific text, and it was a mistake to present it as such, even if just momentarily and hyperbolically. There is no way to correct this misstep. It only showcased D'Souza's arrogance and lack of knowledge. On the apparent contradictions in the Gospels, which is a separate issue than apparent contradictions in the Bible as a whole, D'Souza's answer here was nearly satisfactory. He should have stated that the apparent contradictions in the Gospels are irrelevant when hermeneutically synthesized. He should have acknowledged the literary devices, tropes, and techniques used by the Gospel authors. He should have stated with confidence that these apparent contradictions do not make the Bible any less true. He should have stressed that the New Testament Gospels are the same type of literature as Greek lives, such as those written by Plutarch, where inconsistencies and dischronologies serve dramatic purposes. In the Gospels, these stylistic choices are not there for simple dramatic tension, but to enhance the greater theological narrative. On the slaughter of the Canaanites, Amorites, and slavery in the Old Testament, D'Souza had two simple options. One, acknowledge the current historical record, explaining that these accounts were written post-exile and are not literal histories, but serve a different purpose. At best, the Bible writers were either amoral or agnostic when it comes to the topics of the morality of slavery or the commitment of war crimes. These type of moral judgments or ethical views are anachronistic to the entire corpus of the Bible, as the greater human society and civilization had not yet evolved to recognize those conditions as moral ills until long after the Bible was completed. Second, if he was going to claim these as literal historical events, he would then have to resort to divine command theory, asserting that if God really did command these actions, then they are moral. He then would have had to stand by that statement without distancing himself or the Bible from these events. On the nature of the Bible, D'Souza should have described the Bible as the history of the Jewish people, reflecting their understanding of their relationship with God and their purpose. As their understanding of God evolved, so did their presentation of him. God did not change, but their perception did. This does not mean that our unchanging, omnipotent, incorporeal, omnipresent God, who is outside of time and space, became temporarily anthropomorphic to physically interact and speak directly with characters in the Old Testament portions of the Bible, as recorded in episodes that seem to claim as much. The Bible itself explains that if such a thing had occurred, just a single word from God would have destroyed them. Explanations for this exist in rabbinical Jewish, Kabbalistic, Eastern Orthodox, Catholic, and historical Reformation theology. Christians who adhere to ecumenical councils and creeds believe that revelation is progressive and that doctrine and dogma have developed over time. This development did not end with the last page of the Bible, but continues throughout church history, as seen in the church fathers, the councils, and ongoing secular scholarship. Again, I am not claiming that these are the best responses, nor do I assert that my responses would have won the debate. However, I believe these answers are far superior to anything D'Souza presented, defended, or wavered on during his debate with Alex O'Connor. I would now like to briefly discuss Gavin Ortlund's response and review of this same debate. Gavin attempted to mitigate the damage done by D'Souza, answering Alex O'Connor's points thoroughly and calmly. He even offered to debate O'Connor himself, which I think is a great idea. However, It may not be as easy for Gavin as he anticipates. For one thing, no amount of whitewashing or apologetics can undo the damage done to apologetics by D'Souza's performance. The best approach when opponents bring up this debate would be to acknowledge that D'Souza was not the right opponent for O'Connor and that Dinesh's theology is flawed. D'Souza demonstrated a poor understanding and seemingly heterodox view of the relationship between the Old Testament and the New Testament. It was embarrassing that O'Connor had to coach D'Souza on the common apologetical arguments for his own positions. O'Connor knew the arguments and responses better than D'Souza, which was a shame and cringe-worthy for everyone watching. I do not foresee Gavin getting flustered or angry as Dinesh did, but Gavin is only human. While he may remain composed in his hypothetical showing against Alex, Gavin's approach and answers on contentious topics like slavery and the slaughter of the Canaanites might not be as easily tolerated as they were when he was confronting Dr. Bowen and Dr. Kipp. O'Connor will have watched that encounter, will have researched these topics on his own, and will have counters prepared. That being said, Gavin did make a good point by referencing how Paul objected to slavery, noting that enslavers will not enter the kingdom of heaven. This was a clever response that I hadn't considered as a counter to Alex or Bowen, and it's a strong argument to use. I would have also added that in Christ there is neither slave nor free, that these principles, along with others, helped inspire anti-slavery sentiment in many Christian hearts, and during the age of civil rights, inflamed the hearts of men such as Martin Luther King Jr. This concludes my review. I hope you found it illuminating. This is not a debate I would recommend watching for educational purposes regarding Christianity or debate tactics. It is a train wreck. If you choose to watch, do so with a mind to enjoying the spectacle. Although I would have a hard time watching this debate again. Thank you and good night.